Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Mike Ward. I am the Chief Product Officer at Input Output. Thank you for joining us this morning. So the less you hear of me, the better off we are. I am only here to help MC this. So we have one mission today. We're here to talk to you about DeFi on Bitcoin. So we have a couple of different things we're going to talk to you about. Hopefully you get excited about it. And why would we be here? Why is Input Output here? I think, we talk a lot about the technology like UTXO. We have a common technology platform. I personally think it's more the spirit of what we were trying to achieve. So what Charles set out to do years ago was building on the same vision, same principles that the Bitcoin community had. So we think we are your spiritual brethren, not simply technical counterparts in this whole thing. However, we are also here because of the technology part. What has enabled all of this is the BitVMX technology. So we are joined by a number of partners, one very important partner being Fairgate, over at the table here, who are some of the masterminds behind this. And of course, this all comes from one big change in the Bitcoin community, which is Taproot, that all of this builds on. And who would have thought there would be change? I used to work with an engineer, Mike Hearn, for a number of years. And if anybody knows Mike Hearn, he tried to put in some change. And eventually it ended up in a violent departure. So the community is capable of change, but I think this is a path for us now with Taproot, with the BitVMX technology, big things can happen. So a lot of speakers today. I'm going to open with Charles Hoskinson momentarily. I will give you the agenda so you know what you're in for first. So we are going to open with Charles. We're a little behind schedule, unfortunately. And then we're going to start from the user experience and keep going deeper into the tech stack. So Brandon from our wallet team from Lace is going to show you the experience we envision for all of this. Everybody, the cliche in this industry is we've got to make the UX better. So this is our first attempt at that. And we're going to keep iterating through. So hopefully it's a great UX you see there. So that's after Charles talks. We're going to talk about the bridge after this. So Torben is going to walk us through the BitVMX bridge that's being built, how that works. And then we're going to go even deeper in the stack. And a really exciting thing here, because a lot of what we're talking about is how we're bringing Bitcoin into DeFi, leveraging the Cardano stack, leveraging the secure bridge. But we have another thing where we can bring the smart contracts back the other direction. So quite powerful. Riley's going to walk us through that. And then finally, we have a really exciting panel that I'll introduce when we get to that time. But first up, please welcome Charles Hoskinson.
Hi, everybody. I always open that way. It's fun. And I'll put my coffee over here. So it's always bittersweet when you come to these large Bitcoin conferences, because I'm old enough to remember the olden days of Bitcoin when we didn't have elaborate conferences like this. So if you walk the expo hall, you can see these gigantic miner setups that they have. They're like $5 to $10 million. They're multi-megawatt. And it dawned upon me that when I first started mining Bitcoin way back in the day, CPU mine, I mined more Bitcoin with my computer than those will mine during the entire lifetime of the unit. It's like, hell yeah. But that tells you things change. And Bitcoin is finding its way, and it has been one of the most successful open source projects and paradigm changes in human history when you look at it. It is fundamentally changing people's view of money, and fundamentally changing people's view of ownership and property rights. It was this asset that just came out of nowhere. It solved a very specific and particular problem, this concept of value exchange and value generation without a middleman. And it didn't seem like it was ever going to take off, and then it did. In the early days of Bitcoin, we had spreadsheets and Bitcoin Talk and other places, and you would illegally use PayPal to facilitate transactions, and you got defrauded. You didn't care. You're like, it's only 50 Bitcoin. Who the fuck cares? I have an Xbox that I bought on BitMit. Anybody remember BitMit back in the day? It was like an eBay for Bitcoin. It went out of business, and I think it's like a $40 million Xbox at the current exchange rate. I can't give away that Xbox. It's just not going to happen. But things stay the same. The principles are still there. There's 3 rules to Bitcoin, kind of like Baldur's Gate with Cazador. There are 3 things you can never violate with Bitcoin. So you talk to a Bitcoiner. Only Bitcoin exists. That's rule number 1. Number 2, always pay in Bitcoin. So transaction fees in Bitcoin. And if you're going to make a yield, it better be back in Bitcoin that you make that yield in. So those are the three universal rules, and that's just why it's always been challenging with the community to embrace the DeFi movement. Because while philosophically we're starting to get to a point, especially with networks like Cardano, which are very decentralized under the hood as measured by things like EDI, there's other tokens. So already rule number one has been violated. And then also your security should come from the Bitcoin network. That's rule number one. It's like there's only Bitcoin. So only Bitcoin can secure something. Everything else doesn't work. It's a shitcoin. You can be around for 25 years and thousands of papers and have billions of transactions, but only proof of work can secure things. That's just the way people feel. That's like trying to change someone's religion. It's not going to happen. So stop ignoring that. Accept it. Embrace it. What the Bitcoiners brought to the cryptocurrency space is a multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem where every government is going to start buying it. Every Fortune 500 company is going to start holding it, and it's the greatest onboarding mechanism we've ever seen of any project, any financial system in the history of humanity. In 15 years, we've gone from a few crazy people to 550 million people. Think about that. In another 15 years, we're going to be in probably 2 to 5 billion people that are in this ecosystem as a direct result to Bitcoin. So why do we pick on it? Why do we say, oh, change and do these types of things? Bitcoin accommodated. It created Taproot. And there were many great ideas like Mast, and I remember reading about it many years ago, and other such things that came in, and there were fights and arguments, but at the end of the day, they move at their pace. And because they added it, what they've done is they've created a hook that makes it possible for Bitcoin to talk to other networks. Now, not in a particularly fast or cost-effective way, but it can talk to other networks, and it can be secure. So that's the first major step forward, is acknowledging that, recognizing that, and also asking the fundamental paradigm, isn't it funny, a gold mine where the gold is only valuable if it stays at the mine? It's a pretty absurd statement when you really think about it. And that's literally what people are advocating when they advocate against Bitcoin DeFi. Bitcoin's valuable because it's scarce and it costs a hell of a lot of money to make. It doesn't matter where that Bitcoin sits, whether it's on the Bitcoin network or it's wrapped somewhere else or it's on a centralized exchange. Bitcoin has its value because of where it came from. So what's going to happen? It's already happening a little bit. About 18 billion has leaked its way out. Year by year, tens of billions, eventually hundreds of billions of dollars of value is going to exit the Bitcoin network and go on tour like tourists do to other ecosystems. And it's going to go looking for yield and adventure, and it's going to go looking for fun to have. And then it'll work its way back to Bitcoin over time. So we are technology people at Input Output, and so we think in ecosystems and technology. Let's see if these things are movable. Ah, okay. I'll slide it. I love these props. You guys like the props? Okay, so we have a stack of cubes, and when Quantum Husky comes out, it'll be hypercubes. So this is infrastructure. That's your base stack you got right there. First part, it's how do you get stuff in and out of the Bitcoin network? And in this room, there's people, some of which have devoted more than a decade of their life to thinking about how to answer that question, like Sergio Lerner and the Fairgate crew. And there's others like Sundial and Bitcoin Operating System who are also trying to answer that question. And they have various opinions and approaches, and there's various trade-offs related to the finality, the cost, and the security of the system. So the good news is this part of the stack is very fertile, and in a matter of months to years, you're going to start seeing a lot of amazing output from it. And each year, it's just going to get better. The second part of the stack is the wallet. Okay, remember the three rules. There's only Bitcoin, you pay fees in Bitcoin, you get yield back in Bitcoin. This wallet has to honor that contract about Bitcoin DeFi. You can't break that contract. So we thought long and hard. We're just really, really long and hard. And Brandon's here, and he's going to do a lovely presentation after mine, and he's going to talk about this. But basically, he's going to show you the fruits of those labors. And the idea, it's revolutionary. You ready for it? A switch, a toggle. You got your Bitcoin. You got a little toggle. We're now in DeFi mode. Yay! I clicked the switch. And now we're in DeFi mode. And what does DeFi mode enable? Well, DeFi mode enables... They're not as heavy. I'm just in bad shape. So DeFi mode enables dApps, yield, things to happen. And this is the most exciting part, the third part. And there's a lot of people in this room who are building dApps, and they're talking around, where does the yield come from? Where does the activity come from? What can I do with my Bitcoin once I've clicked that toggle switch? And what's great is Cardano is one of the best homes for this because we can honor all three planks of that contract. Because of the work with Fargate and others, the infrastructure layer long-term relies on the security of the Bitcoin network alone. Check. Because of the amazing work in our wallet ecosystem, it's going to be very easy to make that switch pretty ubiquitous. Check. And Cardano has some technology in it that allows you to pay your transaction fees in Bitcoin. It's called Babel fees. And one of the pioneers who actually innovated the implementation of this is actually in the room right there, Fluid Tokens with Matteo. Great guy, great team. And they figured out, hey, you know what? Let's under the hood, it's ADA, but nobody sees that. It's like when you go to like France. They take euros, we pay in dollars. And when I slide my card, do I see that? No, I just slide my card, right? Similarly, you pay your transaction fee in Bitcoin. And then we build an ecosystem around this, and then we can start finding all kinds of great yield products that can exist. And then what ends up happening is slowly but surely, more and more floats up the stack, more and more exits the gold mine, the gold goes on tour, the tourists go on tour, and little by little you build up an ecosystem. And what's really cool about it is it's not just for Bitcoin, it's for all of the derivations of Bitcoin. We're also at the same breath talking about Litecoin and talking about Dogecoin. We're talking about all of the people that forked Bitcoin and they brought something new to the table. So another presentation we have above and beyond how does the infrastructure work and how does the wallet work. Let's see if my legs can still stretch. How does the DevX work? How do we actually build a ubiquitous development environment for this? So one of the cool things about BitVMX, and it shows you the brilliance of the Fargate team amongst people who thought about this, is they built on a future-proof platform, RISC-V. It's an open source instruction set that the Chinese are using, NVIDIA is using, ARM is using, AMD is using. It's the future. And because of that, the whole, all the ZK EVMs are moving that direction too. Because of that, it's a beautiful platform for developers where they can use tools and infrastructure that they know and love. So what we've done is we said, hey, we have things like Aiken, we have things like Plutus, people like them or hate them. Wouldn't it be cool if we could get those tools to work on BitVMX, which means you can write a Cardano smart contract that runs on Bitcoin natively. And so what we're going to talk about in the next presentation, after Brandon goes and Torben goes, is Riley's going to come in. He's going to talk about a little bit about that work that we've done to figure out how to pull that together. Every part of this stack is an ecosystem unto itself. No one company, no one solution, no one partner is going to do it. But the payoff is enormous. Over the next few years, Bitcoin's probably going to grow to $250,000 to $500,000. And it's going to be a $10 trillion ecosystem at some point, comparable with gold. That gold is going to leave the mine, and it's going to start entering the space as a whole. And I think Cardano is the best position to do that with the principles that Bitcoin cares about. And that's why we came here into the Lion's Den to make the case and build some friends and talk to everybody. In any event, we're going to have this conversation now every single year. And we'll always have some new MacGuffin, some new capabilities, some new UX. But the conversation's only fun if there's people listening and there's partners. And that's why you're all here. And that's why you're all building. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is build a new money system. We're trying to build a new ecosystem. We're trying to change the way finance works for everybody. And you can't do that with just one blockchain. You have to do that with a network of different solutions and providers, but one unified principle that the user is in control and it's decentralized. That's the key. And that's what Satoshi left all of us, and it's why I'm still in the space after all these years. It's why I'm still passionate. It's why I can still lift these bricks, as heavy as they are. So anyway, I want to turn it over now to Brandon, who's going to show us the art of the possible Brandon is very tired. He just came in from Argentina, like there and back again in like 5 days. We opened up our office down there. What did you think of the office?
I think it's beautiful. I think it's not only the office, but the people that are there that come to visit us in the office. It is very much it's a passion project for everyone there. I severely underestimated the amount of passion that is in Argentina because it's not born out of greed or any type of inherent number goes up. It's very much a necessity based on their politics and their history, and that really shows, and it really pervades the entire culture that's there. And coming into the office, meeting all of these people, we hired 5 people that are down there, super sharp, talented individuals, all care about the entire cryptocurrency world.
Yeah, you know what's so cool about Argentina is $700 billion GDP, $100 billion is in crypto. And within the next 5 to 10 years, because of the way the politics are going, it could be the first country in the modern era to have private money and just get rid of the central bank altogether, which means crypto would actually be king there. Second reason is it's one of the countries where you're expected to buy a chainsaw and put it in your office. And we have one, actually. There's a Cardano chainsaw in the office. We tried to bring some here, but Secret Service didn't like that. All right. Show us the art of the possible.
Thank you, sir.
And
appreciate it.
By the way.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah,
$10 million.
Yeah, I'll just say that toggle was one of the longest contention discussions amongst the Lace team that we had as far as where it goes, how it works, what it does, everything, and finally it's realized. So again, my name is Brandon Wolf. I'm the general manager of the Lace wallet. I'm proud to represent the team that put all the effort into this prototype to show you today, as well as the actual work that's going to go into it. The Lace wallet has been traditionally a very popular Cardano wallet. We are moving not only to multi-chain with Bitcoin being the first, but we're also moving to multi-platform. We have a mobile wallet that's going to be launching within the next few months. Bitcoin will actually be released in the next few weeks on mainnet. We are currently on testnet 4 now, getting really good reviews, really good feedback from the user community. So I think that UTXO overlap really kind of shines in there, and it is the natural progression for us. So to that effect, we started talking about the Bitcoin DeFi, and Charles reached out to me one night and said, hey, we need to really get sharp on this UI UX. We really need to lean in hard on this to show just how the efficacy of how this will work to the users. And so we took that to heart. We put a lot of effort into a few different iterations. It's still being iterated. Would love to hear your feedback on this, but I know we're short on time, so I'm going to jump through just some of these things and really showcase how this works, and hopefully it's viewable to you in the back. And I need to put on glasses because I can't see my own screen. All right, let's start with the wallet itself. So this is the Lace wallet you're looking at. This is what the Lace wallet looks like today, minus the Bitcoin DeFi, which will be coming. But you'll see I'm looking at my Bitcoin assets, and there is the toggle that Charles talked about. This toggle, when enabled, is all you need to do to start using Bitcoin within DeFi. And what I would do is I would enable this, and I'm now presented with a slider, or I can manually type in the number of Satoshis. And I'm just going to slide this up to, let's say, 44%. And that's going to give me the allocation of the Bitcoin that I'm holding right now to be utilized within the DeFi ecosystem. I'll update my allocation. I'm then prompted on a transaction summary. I can choose the speed in which this occurs. I can review the fees. The fees are in Bitcoin. Looks good to me. I'm going to do this fast, and I accept those fees. I then sign the transaction in my wallet, and I can immediately jump to the dApp Explorer to start using dApps with this as it's transacting, but I'm going to close this, and you'll see at the bottom it's saying that the Bitcoin funds are being updated. It takes just a few seconds, and then you'll see that the Bitcoin toggle will actually enable, and now I know that I have that amount already allocated. I'm ready to use it. I can jump directly to the dApps. I think in the essence of time, I was going to show you NFTs and ordinals. It functions in exactly the same way. You go in and you select the number of ordinals that you want to enable, or the NFTs that you want to enable. Again, there's an Enable DeFi toggle up in the top, and it will tell me which ones are available. I'm going to choose these two, and I go through the exact same process. I'm just going to quickly do this. So I'm, again, choosing the speed and the fees. All looks good. I'm going to do fast, sign in the transaction. I can, again, jump to the dApp Explorer. But I'm going to close and see that the NFTs are now being updated. Once they're done, I will see them indicated with a DeFi badge/token in the top left of each one of those NFTs, now usable within the ecosystem. But the real showcase, I think, is when we get to the dApps. And this is what Charles is talking about with this particular block. So we're here with the wallet and the dApps. These are the actual empowerment. These are the utility value adds that come that the wallet would enable you to use. And we've got a few of them that are available for showcase now. We actually have 2 of these which are Cardano based dApps, but they are also working with us and they're coming along with us on the journey to becoming Bitcoin enabled. The third one I'm going to show you is called Loan dApp. It's not a real dApp. We just put together a lend borrow scheme so we can just kind of show how this operates. But let me jump into min swap really quick. We'll just do a very quick swap. So I launch this, I review, make sure I'm looking at the right dApp. I go directly to the dApp, and the dApp prompts me to sign to authorize from the wallet. So now I'm authorizing the authorizing this dApp to utilize the Lace wallet. And once I'm in here, I'm looking at Bitcoin and Min tokens. Min tokens are a Cardano native asset. This looks good in terms of the trade that I want to do. Again, the fees are in Bitcoin. I'm confirming this transaction, signing the transaction, and that's it. I'm done. Now the transaction will be submitted. I can view it on the Explorer. I can wait for it to finish, but I've now conducted a cross-chain swap. All right, now let me show you JPEG Store. JPEG Store is another Cardano dApp that we work with heavily to, they provide collections of NFTs and soon to be ordinals. I see that they have a new collection. I'm going to take a look here, just scroll through, choose one, and now I want to borrow Bitcoin against one of these. So for this asset, I'll just choose this one right here. Again, this is a prototype, they're all the same. But the point I want to show here is that you're setting the terms. I am setting the terms at, I want half of a Bitcoin. I want to set a 4.7% interest rate over 21 days. And I can do that request. And that's it, it's done. Now it's out there on the confirmation. I'm waiting for someone to accept that and to create the loan for me. The last one is the loan dApp, and this gives you a little bit a better idea as far as cross-chain capabilities that are available. So I have Bitcoin and I have the Cardano pools represented in this dApp on the screen. If I go into the Bitcoin, I can see that I've got this to supply. And if I want to supply some of my Bitcoin for loans, I can hit the supply. I'll choose an amount. I'll just choose 500,000 Satoshis. We'll set 30 days. 2.05% interest looks good. Hit confirm. Go back to my dashboard. And I'm looking at what I'm lending. But say I wanted to borrow. I will do this for ADA. I want to borrow ADA. I would come again here. I would now choose the borrow, since I don't have any. And I would choose a small amount of 10 ADA. And I will look at the fees, which are also in ADA. And confirm, view dashboard. And now I've got not only what I'm supplying, but what I'm borrowing. That's the art of the possible. These are just some of the things that we're experimenting with, and we're really proud to showcase these because I think it does create a very frictionless, complementary experience for the users. That's my time on this. I have a barcode in the bottom right. It takes you to the Lace website. We would love for you to come along with the journey on the journey with us with Lace as we move to mobile, to multi-chain, enabling Bitcoin DeFi. We really want to be the standard bearers for this. We really want to showcase what is going to be capable, and set the path for other wallets to follow, so that this is not only just an exclusive thing within Lace, but other wallets can leverage the same exact functionality that we're going to provide. Okay, and please come up and say hi. I love to chat about things. I love talking about Lace. I love talking about the opportunities that this provides, and would love to hear your thoughts on things. So I'm going to hand over. Thank you. Thank you. So we've talked about the why and the what is being done. I'm going to keep the facial hair train going and introduce my friend Torben to talk about the how from a technical standpoint.
Hi. Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to present Cardinal to you, which is the protocol we have built. And you know that Bitcoin has some challenges, which is mainly native smart contract capabilities are missing. So we had to come up with something interesting to make this work. And let's take a look on the protocol, how it works, and how we can actually lock some Bitcoin and redeem it laterwards. But first of all, this is a high-level architecture of the protocol. And we have as a foundation the two blockchains, Bitcoin and Cardano. And Bitcoin is obviously where the liquidity originates from. And Cardano is a protocol where we execute DeFi functionalities. And as you have learned already in the presentation from Brandon, that Lace is a connecting part between both of them. And it's interacting directly with the Cardinal protocol. So the Cardinal protocol is made out of some components, and we have a monitor, which is observing the two blockchains, and a TX dispatcher, which is constructing transactions and submitting into the chains to decide what is needed. You also see the BitVMX component. BitVMX allows us to make complex computations on Bitcoin side. And the counterpart for that is smart contracts on Cardano, which are written in Icon. And you also see the Misreal prover. The Misreal prover allows us to make proofs of the blockchain state of Cardano and provide them to BitVMX and execute them in the challenge response protocol of BitVMX. So that's a high-level overview. Let's look a little bit more on what BitVMX is doing. BitVMX is a Turing-complete protocol which can be executed on Bitcoin. It does this by making off-chain computations and on-chain fraud proofs. And these fraud proofs can be executed by committing the inputs to these proofs on-chain. So everything is fully verifiable on-chain. The protocol, BitVMX, is actively developed by Fairgate. And they are here today, as you heard already. So I invite you, if you want to learn more, to talk to them or visit bitvmx.org. I also want to give you a quick overview about Misreal. Misreal is a pretty powerful topic in itself. So I will keep it very short. But if you want to learn more about Misreal, I invite you to look into misreal.network. Misreal is a protocol which allows us to create certificates. So a group of stakeholders can agree about some message. And this message can be, for example, the states, the UTXO state, or the transactions in a block. And not everybody which is participating in this protocol has to sign, but a lottery determines basically a subset. And this subset allows to have a very efficient and scalable system to create these kind of proofs. And how we use it, we will see later. So next, let's take a look at how we bring value in and later out of the system. So everything starts with a UTXO on Bitcoin, and it can have some BTC or an ordinal. And first of all, it needs to create a lock request transaction. And in this lock request transaction, the user basically signals that he wants to participate in DeFi with the assets which are existing on this UTXO. And for that, he has to select a secret. And this secret is in a hashed form part of the transaction. And the operators observe this lock request and start in a second step to construct the actual lock transaction. And this actual lock transaction is a taproot transaction, which has many different spending passes. And these different spending passes are basically defining the protocol which is used in the challenge response protocol of BitVMX later on. So when this lock transaction is successfully constructed and signed by the operators mint the wrapped tokens on Cardano and send them to a smart contract. And these smart contracts will hold the tokens until the next step is executed. And in the next step, the tokens are released to the user. But this does not just happen like this. So in this release transaction, all the information which is needed to lock the assets on Bitcoin are actually getting revealed. This means the secret which the user has chosen is getting revealed, but also the signature of the operators. So the operators and the user need to exchange some data, and this happens off-chain. So the user will share his secret to the operators, and the operators will share their signature to the user. And then either of them can actually submit, in the fifth step, the lock transaction. As we assume that we have one honest operator in all this, it will finally happen. So somebody will submit a lock transaction, and it does not matter who does this, because the data which is needed to submit this transaction is completely public on Cardano. So from this point onwards, the user is actually able to engage with DeFi. And of course, all this happens by clicking the little button you have seen already in the presentation from Brandon. But this is what is happening behind the scenes. So let's next take a look on how the unlocking is working. And let's assume our user has bought an ordinal. So it's not our original user anymore. And he has now, as we see, that the locked UTXO is still existing on Bitcoin, and he has some representation on Cardano for this. But how is the new user now getting in possession of his assets on Bitcoin? So first of all, he needs to create a burn initialization transaction. And in this transaction, he actually burns the tokens. So they are getting destroyed in this step already. And in this step, there is a receipt created. And this receipt is a valid proof of burn. Also, in this transaction, the user is sharing an encryption key. And this encryption key is used in the second step by the operator. So they observe this transaction, and they share off-chain with the user one-time private keys. These one-time private keys are basically belonging to multi-sign addresses. And these multi-sign addresses are part of the taproot UTXO, which we had in the lock transaction. So the UTXO, with its different spending passes, the lock UTXO, has for each combination of operators a spending pass, which allows basically the spending into a specific forward or UTXO. We will see this in a moment. And the user is now selecting, so he's decrypting the keys, and he's checking against the taproot tree what kind of address he can generate from this. And he selects the one he has the keys for. And in the next transaction, in the confirmed transaction, he will actually commit the group ID. So the group ID is the ID of the combination of addresses he selected from the keys he received from the operators. And in this confirmed transaction, the receipt, which was created during the first step, is actually destroyed. So with that, everything on Cardano is not existing anymore. And the operators can create an unlocked transaction on Bitcoin. And they will spend the locked UTXO into this forward UTXO. The forward UTXO is now spendable by the user, and he can do this by using the private keys he received in step 2. With that, the protocol finishes. So it's pretty simple, actually. And the user is now free to use this Bitcoin on his ordinal, which he got on Bitcoin. So that's interesting, but what happens actually when somebody tries to bypass this process? And this is basically where BitVMX and Mistral come into the game. So this unlock step can be challenged by any honest operator. And with that, we would enter a challenge and response protocol. So I also want to mention that in case no dispute arises, this protocol is very efficient and also cost effective. So, but let's look how it works when we have a challenge. So in general, the whole model is based on a 1 out of n trust minimized model. So this means as long as we have one honest operator in the system works. And he can create a challenge to challenge a dispute, to challenge an invalid unlock. So in case of a dispute, the operator which try to unlock must prove that he actually got a proper burn on Cardano. And this must include the correct assets in the correct amount, obviously, but also the group ID. So it must, in principle, he must prove that the confirmation transaction existed and is correct. And he does this with a zero-knowledge proof. So we have a system which creates basically a proof about the transaction inclusion of this confirmation transaction. And the proof generator, the prover which executes the zero-knowledge proof generator needs to provide several data for this. First of all, the Mistral certificate, and also the transaction itself. And by doing that, he can basically prove that the group ID was included in this transaction, and that that everything followed the rules. So this is a bit complex topic, and I invite you to meet with me and let's talk about it. So actually, this is not just theory. We have executed this already on mainnet. So you see this ordinal here, and we have actually swapped this ordinal from from Bitcoin mainnet to Cardano mainnet and back, and everything is fully verifiable. So the QR code you see here brings us to our landing page, and on this landing page you can sign up to get our paper. And in the paper you will find all the links to the transactions so that you can verify it on your own. So let's take a quick look on what's coming next. First of all, we will work on fungible BTC swap support and improve the efficiency about this. Then we want to introduce liquidity provider system, which will scale the bridge and simplifies the user experience. Then we also need to work a little bit more on the ZK proof optimizations to especially bring the proving time more down. And last but not least, we want to have a trustless model, which is better than the 1 out of n trust minimized model, which we have currently. With that, I'm at the end of my presentation, but I want to take a moment to thank the team behind this work. It was a very interdisciplinary work with many different people from different areas, and I want to especially thank the Fairgate team for their creativity and technical knowledge in this, and thank you so much. I will hand now over to Riley. Riley will introduce smart contracts on Bitcoin to you.
Hi, my name is Riley Kilgore, and I'm here today to present some of the work that Casey White and I have been doing over the past few months to enable Cardano smart contract languages to be used as Bitcoin smart contract languages. And we accomplished this through a UPLC to RISC-V compiler, which is obviously then able to be used with BitVMX. And so, to get started, I'd like to convince you that this is actually a good idea. As it's been mentioned by a few different presenters here today, both Cardano and Bitcoin leverage a very similar ledger model, which is that of UTXOs. And so in Cardano, there are a number of things we can do with transactions that are not just spending UTXOs, but we are able to spend UTXOs, obviously, in Cardano, and that's the only thing you can do with them in Bitcoin. So I believe that this fact makes Cardano smart contract languages quite suitable to the existing Bitcoin ecosystem. Right here, you can see a high-level pipeline of what we actually do when we want to get one of our high-level smart contract languages over to something that's compatible with BitVMX. And so already in Cardano, we use UPLC, which is also called untyped Plutus core, in order to have something that can execute on the actual blockchain using what's called a CEK machine. And so that's where the work that Casey and I did starts, with this UPLC. And we take that and we actually serialize it into a format that's compatible with the CEK machine that we wrote directly in RISC-V assembly. So you take the newly serialized UPLC and you provide it to the CEK machine by putting it in the appropriate memory address of the RISC-V program. And you're able to take that RISC-V program, which is now a complete program, and give it to BitVMX so that you can get the appropriate taproot address and leverage smart contracts on Bitcoin. So it was already stated earlier today as well that RISC-V is a reduced instruction set computer architecture, or ISA instruction set architecture, and basically what that means is that there's a number of instructions that we can give to the computer, and these instructions are interpreted sequentially, and there's not very many of them. So in order to actually write a meaningful program using RISC-V, generally what we'll do is we'll have a higher level language, whether it's C or Rust or Zig or whatever it may be, and it compiles to RISC-V. It'll compile to a number of other different ISAs as well. But RISC-V is very popular for different VMs right now. It's gaining more and more popularity for some of the reasons Charles outlined earlier. And it is used by BitVMX, which is a collaboration between Fairgate Labs and Rootstock Labs. And we've been talking very closely with the Fairgate team to make sure that we can build on top of BitVMX and give them the feedback that they need to have it be as conducive to a productive ecosystem as possible. UPLC, which is what we're compiling, like I said before, is used for Cardano smart contracts traditionally. And I have the entire grammar on the right-hand side of the screen here, so there's not really too many instructions, if you will, that need to be considered. Similar to RISC-V, it's kind of an instruction set. It's technically a lambda calculus, but the actual thing that we're trying to achieve is the same. We want to be able to have a small set of instructions that we can use to encode any sort of logic that we might want to execute later. And the CEK machine is an abstract machine that is used in order to evaluate a lambda calculus, in this case UPLC. So you can see on the right-hand side all of the semantics for the CEK machine, which comes directly from the UPLC white paper. And this is what we've had to write in RISC-V assembly in order to get what we're doing working. The grammar on the right-hand side from before is what we've serialized in order to run on the CEK machine that we have in RISC-V. And so I have an example here of what you'd actually want to do in order to write a contract using Icon that would be compatible with Bitcoin via BitVMX. The primary difference here between writing a smart contract for Cardano and writing a smart contract for Bitcoin is that the context is no longer going to have a bunch of transaction introspection information, right? We can't do transaction introspection on Bitcoin. We don't know what the inputs and outputs are based on the validation that we're doing. And so we just get this byte array in this context. And in order for the validation to pass, that byte array must be equal to hello world. So it's pretty simple, straightforward example and quite contrived. But I think it demonstrates the point that this is a high-level language and we're able to compile it to something that's compatible with Bitcoin. Now, right now, we only have byte array and integer built-ins implemented. We are working towards having abstract data types as well as cryptographic primitives available to users. And I think that that's going to make this system much more useful in production. So, yeah, I don't have anything more to my presentation, but I do think I have a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions on what we've built here. And yeah, thank you for being here today. Yeah, do you have any questions for me, Charles?
No, just a few comments. So it's easy when you see all this moon math and denotational semantics and these things on the page to miss the point. The point is Bitcoin has never really had a high-level programming language. It is like swimming through a swamp filled with alligators and razor blades and scorpions that swim when you want to develop Bitcoin script. And what Cardano has effectively done because of this work is Cardano is becoming the de facto dev platform for Bitcoin script, if you think about that. And that's an amazing thing. So if you're a Bitcoin developer now, your first entry point can be through BitVMX. And what you know is that over time, that platform is going to get more capable. It's going to get faster. It's going to get cheaper to utilize. And ultimately, it's going to have a larger ecosystem around it. It's going to have things that start looking like Lightning, but perhaps it's better. It's going to have a lot of off-chain stuff to host your applications. That's what the Maestro relationship and the Blockfrost relationship is. Because you say, well, where do I host my dApp if I have off-chain components and these types of things? But then you also have the wallet infrastructure and these types of things. It's all batteries included. So you could hate Cardano. You could think Cardano is the worst thing in the entire world and you're a Bitcoin maximalist, but you could actually end up using the Cardano tools to develop on Bitcoin. And what's cool is UPLC is not just one thing. As you saw, we had Scala. We had TypeScript, which is basically JavaScript. You have Aiken, which looks like Rust. And you have Haskell as a dialect. And also all the formal verification tooling. Cardano is known for this. We are the guys that do formal verification. So we're building this dense stack of things to be able to verify that your application is correct. And that's a unique selling proposition that the ecosystem as a whole. This is also some of the most difficult, meticulous engineering. So I really do want people to give this guy a hand. It is not easy. You have to be remarkably careful and patient to write this type of code. So thank you for taking the yeoman's work.
Thank you, Charles.
We're real proud of you. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and he'll get us for the next thing on the agenda.
Thank you, everybody. Now we have a panel of very qualified speakers, so I'm not on this panel as a result. we are going to add an extra panelist last minute also with us, though we did have everybody show up. So first off, we have from Babylon, David C. I believe is here. Yeah. Welcome, David. Sergio is going to join us from the Fairgate team. Fantastic. Eric Wall from Taproot Wizards. Thanks, Eric. And Adam Dean from Learner Labs. And Yago from Bitcoin OS. So, Yago's our last minute addition here. You know, he's an alternative approach to what we've been doing. So we think it'll spice things up a little bit to see if we have a slightly different angle on the work. So this is a community of effort. We're trying to benefit both the Bitcoin, Cardano, and other communities. So I think this will be more interesting. So thank you, Yago, for joining us last minute. All right, everybody take your seats. Our moderator is going to be Ramon. Ramon is the CTO at IOG. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
We have a lot of amazing panelists today. I respect all of them for their contribution.
Where's your chair? Do you not have a chair?
I'm just going to stand, the pressure, etc.
Salafi.
So they all contribute a lot to crypto and for decades combined, I guess. So the first question would be, what does DeFi and Bitcoin look like to you? And why Bitcoiners should care? So we can start with you, Eric.
All right, well, hello everyone. I think, so many of the people that came to Bitcoin back in 2014 were presented with a dream of how Bitcoin was going to scale using sidechains, trustless sidechains. That was the reason why the company Blockstream was created, was this vision that we're going to have any functionality that we want. We're going to be able to be bridging trustlessly back and forth between other sidechains. That is what Rootstock set out to do. That is the dream that they have tried to realize, and kind of the dream that Blockstream eventually abandoned and said, we're just going to do a federation. So it is exciting to see that there are still fiery souls that still live for that vision to make Bitcoin more functional, to make Bitcoin more scalable. And new approaches have recently opened up, either through things like BitVM or adding additional opcodes to the scripting language. So I think the vision is still there, the future is bright, and we have a lot of people on this panel that are exploring that particular frontier.
Yeah, so back in the beginning, Bitcoiners, there were many visions living together in the Bitcoin community. You have the cypherpunks, they wanted privacy, and you had the dreamers, they wanted to build a new financial system on top of Bitcoin. And there were the technologies, they wanted to create this payment network that was super efficient and decentralized. And of course, the maximalists, they wanted Bitcoin to become a store of value. But in 2015, what happened is, like, we had these block size wars, and there was two camps, and the small blockers actually won this debate. And so the vision narrowed, and the good thing is that the path to Bitcoin becoming a store of value accelerated. But at the same time, that brought, ossifying, the Bitcoin protocol started ossifying too early. And so these other use cases that were part of the Bitcoin ethos, that these were Bitcoiners that having their dreams put on that, as Eric mentioned, and their dreams were left out of the equation. So I think that what we are seeing now with the upcoming BitVM, BitBMX, and all these protocols, and what are coming next this year, is that we are we will see these dreams come back. And for me, Bitcoin DeFi is just these original dreams and these original visions for Bitcoin coming back to Bitcoin, but not in terms of L1s, but sit on top of Bitcoin with these L2s.
Hello. What does Bitcoin DeFi mean to me? So here's the meaning. So Bitcoin as an asset is the largest asset in the crypto world, roughly 60% of the total market cap. The other 40% is in the rest. So what Bitcoin DeFi means to me is to connect this primarily idle asset 60% with the rest of the 40% of the crypto ecosystem. And together, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. That's what Bitcoin DeFi means to me. Now, I'm a technologist, so what does that mean to me as the technologist is to build the trustless protocol that enables Bitcoiner to be able to participate in this interaction. And BitVM, as you mentioned, is one technology. At Babylon, we built a protocol called Bitcoin staking, which essentially allows Bitcoiners to trustlessly stake the Bitcoin to provide security to proof-of-stake chains. Actually, Eric mentioned the concept of sidechain. This is one security model that can be used to secure sidechain, actually, Bitcoin staking. So I think both from a technological point of view and from a use case point of view, what Bitcoin DeFi means to me is to connect these two worlds together.
Yeah. Wow. That's hard to follow there. Coming from a Cardano first perspective rather than a Bitcoin first perspective, I agree. It's very similar to putting that inert asset to work. And so it's kind of like this industrial revolution moment for the cryptocurrency space in that Bitcoin doesn't just have to be shiny rocks that people trade back and forth for as money anymore, but you can put it to work and you can make electronics and you can do things with that Bitcoin. And of course, part of that is earning yield and getting more use and utility, but you can be staking and supporting and securing other networks with this asset that ultimately always settles back to Bitcoin. So, yeah, I mean, for me, the future is kind of wide open, and we're right at the forefront of this new frontier, and that's just really exciting.
Without programmable Bitcoin, every single Bitcoiner who ever wants to do anything with their BTC has to go through a centralized intermediary, basically robbing Bitcoin of its original purpose. Without scalable Bitcoin, we have a situation where more and more Bitcoin is forced into the hands of centralized intermediaries, ETFs, MicroStrategies, because the Bitcoin network itself cannot actually manage the scale of transactions required. And without programmable and scalable BTC, we have a situation where blocks remain empty into the foreseeable future. The Bitcoin security budget is reduced on an ongoing basis, and questions begin to arise about the longevity of Bitcoin itself. So Bitcoin DeFi is crucial not just to individual Bitcoiners in order to be able to utilize their BTC, but also to Bitcoin as a whole. And in fact, for crypto as a whole, because there's 60, 70% of the asset value in the space is in BTC. And so those ecosystems which take the forefront in being able to bring programmability and scalability not only contribute to Bitcoin, but can also become the systems which lead crypto in the decades to come. So Bitcoin DeFi is everything.
Well, you know, I was here before there was any money. You know, Bitcoin was under $1 and nobody cared. And the only thing we really had was the ability to dream. That was it. And we dreamed these dreams of this thing taking over the world. And as far-fetched and fantastical as it could be, you know, Bitcoin got to a point where it actually had a legitimate chance to start making meaningful progress on that. And it's no coincidence that when we started thinking about Ethereum, almost all the people that came from Ethereum were Colorcoin and Mastercoin developers and other people on Bitcoin Network, because the first logical place to improve things was Bitcoin itself. And it got frustrating and stale. And then there was a large conflict, as you mentioned, the big block debate. And it was much like when psychedelics got banned. You know, there was all this amazing progress for the first 20 years in psychedelics, and they said, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And then that gets banned and no one talks about it. It's like persona non grata. And now we're starting to talk about it again. So we took a hiatus as an ecosystem, Bitcoin, from really having a thought about programmability and smart contracts and these other things. And there was always this MacGuffin, either Lightning or sidechains, where that would come in and save everything. But it was never a practical conversation. It was more of like, we'll get around to it type of deal. Then after Taproot, it awoken people. It got people excited again. We say, actually, we have something that's tangible to hook onto. And it's a huge technological challenge, miracles in cryptography and engineering, and you have to think in terms of an ecosystem, so you have to build up the whole stack. There's a lot of things there, but that's all implementation details. And the payoff is not that people are going to make money. The payoff is Bitcoin can now continue what it started on. It can continue that dream of how do we reform things and change things, and it's not just doing it anymore for everyday people in rooms like this. The US government, because of the reserve, is going to hold 212,000 Bitcoin. I'd like to make those programmable. BlackRock holds a huge amount. I'd like to make those programmable. The same for all the other sovereign governments and Fortune 500 companies that grab that. And now, for the first time since Bretton Woods, we have honest money again, which is a really powerful thing. And it's why all of us signed up in the early days of Bitcoin, and we got delusioned when we thought there was no path to get there. And now we actually are back on that path. And so it's an honor and exciting to be back, because I got pretty bitter for a long time. And now I'm not bitter anymore. I got to dream again. So thanks for having me back.
So what are the main blockers that are keeping Bitcoin back, holding Bitcoin back?
Yeah, I thought about this question, and except for the limitations of the scripting language, I don't really think there are any blockers. That's been the challenge all along, is that we didn't find a way, using the primitive opcodes of the Bitcoin scripting language, to be able to verify zero-knowledge proofs, to bridge in and bridge out of more flexible and expressive second layers. There's no... I mean, so the Bitcoin asset has matured into a new stage where it's different from a lot of other cryptos. We finally have an environment in the world where Bitcoin goes up both in risk on and risk off environments. And I think that is an accelerating reason why people want to use Bitcoin particularly for DeFi, because it is not, it doesn't trade like a tech stock anymore. I do believe that if we are able to navigate this maze of Bitcoin script and build something that's functional and trustless, then there is massive demand for this. There always has been. Bitcoiners sometimes pretend that there isn't demand when we cannot do it, but as soon as you tell them, for example, with the Taproot upgrade that Charles mentioned, there was a belief that Taproot alone would allow you to create endlessly, complex smart contracts, which turned out not to be the case. But when that was presented to people, all of a sudden, the entire Bitcoin maximalist community was like, hell yeah, we can do DeFi on Bitcoin now, and we're going to crush all the other chains. So I don't really think that there are any cultural blockers, or there's no lack of funding. It's only being able to navigate script to achieve this that's required.
Yeah, I fully agree with Eric. Like, the short answer is trustless bridging. Like, any of the technology required to scale Bitcoin DeFi, or even make it private, everything was developed in the last 5 years with on other chains, with academics. Like, we have Zcash. I mean, we have Monero. We have programmable smart contracts on Rootstock, on Cardano. So the whole technology stack has been growing and growing and growing. And Bitcoiners have been, thinking more about the store of value story. But yeah, I mean, the missing piece here is the trustless bridging. And as far as we can go to achieve trustless bridging, the closer we are to having this full ecosystem around Bitcoin with the other L2s and L1s connected to Bitcoin.
Yeah, so when we started the Bitcoin staking idea about 2 years ago, people asked us, this idea is totally stupid because Bitcoiners are not interested in doing staking or anything DeFi, actually. They're just interested in holding the Bitcoin. And so I view the Bitcoin staking protocol as like an experiment to see whether this hypothesis is correct or not. So we had some validation on this experimental result in December last year. That was when we opened the cap for a week to stake with our protocol. One day, suddenly 10,000 Bitcoin showed up on our protocol, 10,000 Bitcoin. We have no idea who this person is. To this day, we don't know who this person is. But I think this is one validation. I guess people are experimenting with the 10,000 Bitcoin on a new protocol. And I think that's the value when you build a really trustless protocol that people will come. And today we have 45,000 Bitcoin, and I'm happy to say the 10,000 Bitcoin person is still there. We still don't know who he is. So I think staking is kind of a very interesting use case because it's relatively simple, but powerful. Now, when we want to extend this use case to broader use cases like bridging, liquidity, then the problem becomes more challenging. And the two limitations is one, as Eric mentioned, the scripting language. In particular, the lack of covenants is really hurting us. We need covenants, guys. We need covenants, number one. Number two is our imagination on cryptography. I think cryptography is a really, really powerful tool that you can do a lot with, and we still have not explored the full potential of working cryptography. Let me call it Bitcoin cryptography, shall I say.
Yeah, wow, just again echoing what some of the other panelists have said here. I think, trustless bridging was one of the first biggest blockers. But what's the only thing really holding us back right now is, for one, letting the Bitcoiners know that they can actually put their assets to use and work now, and then building these alliances and these partnerships that we're barely forming, and making people realize that as an ecosystem, this cryptocurrency industry, we're stronger together. If we stop fighting against one another and we work together, that's how, rather than going fast and alone, if we're going to go a lot further together. And so building these relationships is probably that final mile that we need to get over.
So I think what Eric was describing is Bitcoin maximalism is effectively a form of Stockholm syndrome. What's happened is Bitcoiners couldn't do anything, and so they had to convince themselves. They were held hostage by their inability to do, and so they had to convince themselves that doing anything was inherently evil. But we're now in a situation, we got Taproot Wizards, we've got Rootstock, we've got Babylon Staking, we've got this entire panel, and we've got Charles at a Bitcoin conference. I think
I started the Bitcoin Education Project. I brought like 70,000 people.
It's been a few years.
That is true.
There are no, to your question, there are no blockers at this point. Now it's a question of implementation. So there's still time and there's still creativity and imagination, but there are no blockers.
Yeah. So I think the biggest blocker is honesty about trade-offs. So when you look at Bitcoin, the way it's designed, it's going to give you a certain set of things. And every protocol, no matter how good your protocol is, there are things a protocol is strong about, and there are things it's weak about. So you look at things like finality time, you look at things like transaction cost and throughput, you look at things like the security assumptions of the underlying network. So the first step when you think around Bitcoin DeFi is, what set of trade-offs do you need for the type of DeFi you're doing? And then are you going to be completely reliant on the trade-off window of Bitcoin itself? Or do you want to accept a hybrid model because you're unhappy with the trade-off window that Bitcoin gives you? What's nice about what's happening with these approaches as we build up the stack is we can create a marketplace and an adult conversation about it, as opposed to maximalism, which is you only get one trade-off. It's like a Soviet supermarket. It's like there's only one breakfast cereal, fucking take it. It's now you get Fruit Loops or, Captain Crunch. You have options in this whole thing. And what's cool about it is that then scientists know and great engineers know how to engage with that. Because what is science in good engineering? It's moving a trade-off window. So if you say, hey, we have a 1 of n honest majority assumption, let's move to trustless. If you say that the finality time is 12 hours, let's try to move it to 10 minutes. If you say the transaction cost is $500, can we make it more efficient? Now let's move it to 50. It gives them a natural role in place to operate, and you'll notice it's a hard and cool and interesting problem when you have brilliant people working on it. David is not just a normal guy. He's a professor at Stanford. This is not a normal university. It's one of the top research schools in the world, and he's working with people like Dan Bonnet down the hall. This is where some of the top computer scientists in history. The internet was born there, for God's sakes, with Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn. This is a major research university, and if a Stanford professor said this is worth my time and my career to work on that, that's a good indication that this is a sexy, interesting, and very meaty problem. And it's the same for Sergio. He's been around the space for more than a decade. He's done so many amazing things. He doesn't have to spend his time on this thing, but he chooses to spend his time on this thing. Why? Because it's an interesting problem, and he knows over a period of months and years how to move that trade-off profile, which means the universe of things that you can do grows over those years, and the trade-offs become more acceptable for larger and larger commercial transactions. And then the other side of it is the blockchain-to-blockchain partnership. It was adversarial because we had no way to work together. It was adversarial because it was either Bitcoin or everything else. Now it's who does Bitcoin want to partner with? And what do these networks provide? Because at the end of the day, if the gold is going to leave the gold mine and go somewhere on vacation, it's either going, as Adonis said, to a centralized KYC, AML entry point in some jurisdiction like the United States or Dubai, where at any time you've lost custody. Remember, not your keys, not your wallet. I'm old enough to remember that was a big deal in Bitcoin. And instead of going there, it's going to another network with perhaps a different security model, but you are in the driver's seat of how you want to facilitate that relationship and how much of Bitcoin you want to bring in for expense to make that secure. But the user's in control of this at the end of the day. And over time, more and more assets will leave, and over time, more and more interesting things will be done. But it moves the chains, and it actually gets us closer and closer to that original dream of a financial system that's owned by the edges, not by the meaty, evil center.
So from 10 questions to 6 to 3, finally.
Well, we added a panel, an extra panel.
So I will resume that way. Let's discuss stablecoin and real-world assets on Bitcoin natively. So how runes or ordinals can help there. By the way, Eric, you missed the demo. We actually wrapped an ordinal from Bitcoin mainnet to Cardano mainnet. So we'll share that with you after, but it's a cool thing. So stablecoin and RWAs.
Yeah, so I think we should have talked about this more. So when we're talking about DeFi on Bitcoin, what are exactly the use cases that people are excited about? And one of them, of course, is I have Bitcoin. I want to get a stablecoin loan using my Bitcoin as collateral. So stablecoins are, and also just swapping trustlessly between Bitcoin and stablecoins is immensely valuable for people. So how do we get stablecoins natively on Bitcoin? Well, we had stablecoins natively on Bitcoin through the master coin that later became the Omni layer. The Tether was originally, all of the USDT was on Bitcoin, but that didn't scale, and it was hard to freeze the USDT that was stolen from exchanges and hacks. So it's about providing the stablecoin issuers with a functional enough platform that they can use to issue their stablecoins on that is competitive with something like Ethereum. For example, USDT gets a message from Binance saying these stablecoins were stolen. Can you freeze them so we can return them to the right person? That is so giving the issuers the functionality that they need would help tremendously. But they're also the functionality alone usually isn't enough to convince someone like Circle or Tether to natively issue their stablecoin on that chain. There also needs to be a traction. There needs to be a liquid ecosystem of many users, widespread wallet usage. So that's for trusted stablecoins. There are also ways to make trustless stablecoins using DeFi. But I'm gonna pass the time over to someone else that maybe wants to add something to this.
Yeah, so I should have sit there because he takes the words from my mouth. But no, I think that native stablecoins on Bitcoin are not coming back. I think maybe we have a summer, like, tokens are coming back to Bitcoin, but let's go back and find the reason why Tether went out of Bitcoin. It's because Bitcoin is slow. Bitcoin, it does not have enough transaction volume to support real payments on stablecoins. So this is going to happen on layer 2, not on Bitcoin, and we just need to bridge them to layers 2. But the thing is that we can think about Tether on layers 2, and many teams are working on this. But this is not Bitcoin DeFi. Bitcoin DeFi is Bitcoin collateralized stablecoins, because the other is not aligned with Bitcoin ethos. I mean, some people may like it, but it's not really permissionless. They can be censored. So I think that the key is how to move Bitcoins to this layer 2 to collateralize and create these new stablecoins. And of course, Rootstock, we have protocols to create Bitcoin collateralized stablecoins. But the key here is the breaching, such as BitBMX.
Yeah, so I'm a technologist, so I focus on technology. I think it's the trustless lending using Bitcoin as collateral and stablecoin as borrowing is really super interesting problem. I think the general bridging problem, I think there's still quite a bit of challenges. We've been talking a lot lately, but I think there's still quite a bit of challenges. So I think designing protocols for this specific, very important use case could be a very interesting, I think, problem. Just like Bitcoin staking. Bitcoin staking is actually one particular use case of Bitcoin, which is quite important. And I think we've made quite a bit of progress on this particular use case. So maybe we can try similar ideas here for lending.
Does anyone believe in RWAs on Bitcoin through ordinals?
Not through ordinals, no. But absolutely. I mean, look, when we come down to the crux of it, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a ledger. That's why it exists. We use all kinds of terms and blockchain. Nobody cares about blockchains. What people want is property rights. They want ownership of their assets. And the most trusted borderless ledger in the world is Bitcoin by far, and increasingly so. It is integrated with the global financial traditional systems and becoming more and more integrated all the time. And so if you ask yourself, in a world where we're constantly seeing the economy become more of an information economy rather than a physical economy, in a world where the ability to perform cross-border settlement becomes increasingly important, in a world where the internet becomes the native place that all business is done, are you going to want to see a global trusted ledger? The answer, I think, is obviously yes. Most assets will migrate there, and ultimately that ledger is going to be Bitcoin. And so then the question becomes, how do you bring these assets to Bitcoin? And I don't think it's runes or ordinals or BRC20s. Those were proofs of concept of the idea of having programmable tokens that can be issued on Bitcoin. That will be the canonical place of record, but can be transacted in other places like Cardano. And so what we released a week ago was the Charms white paper. Ivan, who was the lead developer there, and actually is a former Cardano dev, unfortunately had to leave. But what we've done with Charms is create a standard which allows for programmable tokens, turning Bitcoin into a programmable general purpose ledger, and allowing those tokens to be moved not by a bridge, but by the user individually to Cardano, where they can automatically be used as CNTs, combining the world of CNTs and general purpose tokens on Bitcoin. And I think that is the kind of model that is going to be the future of property rights in general.
So you saw the presentation of Cardinal or protocol that we launched today. What do you think about it?
I think that is the kind, I think, for example, what you guys have done is provide a fantastic UI experience. And, you know, I've already said this, right? That is a gorgeous UI which makes it easy to see what the future looks like, right? This sort of seamless experience where the user can know that their property rights are protected by the highest level of security and are acceptable anywhere, but all of that complexity is taken away, and they can have a beautiful UI. And so I think a big part of the challenge for the coming years is removing that complexity from what the user has to experience and giving them, packaging that for them in a way which is gorgeous and easy to use.
So, you know, the question was about stablecoins and real-world assets on Bitcoin. And it's kind of funny, when I put my Bitcoin maxi hat on, I say, you know, the reason Bitcoin exists is we had a divorce from the legacy financial system after 2008. And it was not a good divorce. It was a messy, terrible divorce, which, you know, lawyers were involved and all this stuff. And asset-backed stablecoins that are centralized, it's kind of like having to give your kids over to your former partner for the weekend, and you just really hate doing it, but it's court mandated. So I hate the centralization of them. I hate the fact that the banking industry is leaking its way back into the crypto industry because they're putting all the things we tried to get away from into crypto. And so I've always been a fan of algorithmic stablecoins. In fact, I created the very first one with Dan Larimer. It was called BitUSD, and we had a whole ecosystem for it, BitShares. Adana and I are kind of old enough to remember it. And, you know, it did work, but what it did do is kind of show the art of the possible. And we created another one called JED, and it's ADA collateralized, and it's worked pretty well. And I always dreamed of finding a way to have Bitcoin be an algorithmic stablecoin where you use Bitcoin to create a stable value, similar to how the Bretton Woods Agreement worked when you had gold backing US dollars. And that's how you create sound money. You connect it to an anchor point. Now, why that's relevant is it's completely on the cryptosphere. There's no third-party custodian. And it just flows the way you'd want it to flow. What's cool about this is we can still dream about that and work at that. And it's something we're going to think about with or without the legacy world liking it. Because, you know, fuck them. In terms of real-world assets, everything these days is a real-world asset. You got real estate, you got intellectual property, you know, you got you know, the hard assets, the soft assets. And really, the name of the game here is how do you give Bitcoiners the ability to participate in that without selling their Bitcoin? So I think that the number one thing is figuring out lending protocols where they can kind of lend out, get some stablecoin, do something, participate, get a yield, get the yield back in Bitcoin, get their Bitcoin back. There's probably a path there because the scarcity of Bitcoin is going to grow dramatically over the next 24 to 36 months. As the US starts buying it, as corporations start buying it, the market structure bill comes in, which is likely August, the demand for Bitcoin will be so furious in many different respects that that's going to lead to a shortage. And this means lending is going to be a huge component of the market. And that's tax efficient. Because imagine if you're an OG, like that 10,000 Bitcoin person, you probably got that Bitcoin under $1 or under $5 or under $100. And now you really, really do not want to divest it at $120,000 and pay that tax bill. So you'd much rather just lend it, that's tax neutral, get a yield and pay the taxes on that yield and live off your Bitcoin as it appreciates over time. Because, you know, it's a deflationary asset. And if the world is buying it, there will be a day that we have $1 million Bitcoin. By the way, I was a Ron Paul guy. That's why I came in this damn space. The same for Dave Johnson. I was Colorado. He was the Louisiana guy, speaking of BitAngels and Mastercoin. And we believed in hard money. And we said, isn't it nice to have money that when you disappear for 10 years, come out of your coma and you come back, it's worth like 5 times as much? Instead of money that you disappear for 10 years and you come back and it's worth half as much? It's the crazy thing. My dad worked 40 years as a doctor and he saved up all this money. In the last 10 years of his retirement, it's worth half as much as when he earned it. And I know how hard he worked. He was a physician. He was on call at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday getting yelled at by some old woman who was combative and demented and throwing stuff at him. Okay, it was not a fun job sometimes, but he did it to save. And he has this amazing nest egg, and now our government's deteriorating it by 8 to 10% per fucking year. It is the biggest Ponzi scheme in human history to say that we should tolerate that every day we get robbed a little bit, and depending on who's in charge is how much we pull the lever. If we go to hard monies, the money gets more valuable over time. We need to take that back, and Bitcoin is the first hard money of my lifetime that I've seen. We just need to clean a few of the edges up, and that's what Bitcoin DeFi is effectively doing for all of us. And so I know we're out of time, and I ramble a lot, but I do want to thank all the panelists for being here. Each and every one of you look at the lens from a completely different way. Like Adam is here because he's really about the physical, and one day we're going to have vending machines and ATMs and point of sales and these types of things. And Adonis has a great approach that he's been thinking about for a long time, and Sergio's been here for a while, and Eric's been here for a while. I think we fought over Twitter a few times, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm still blocked by you, Charles, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the audience.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Romain.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much to the panel. And the moment you guys really been waiting for is finally here. We're actually going to feed you. We do have one call to action. There's a lot of different pieces. There's a lot of different players helping make this happen. Scan the QR code. We have a couple different ways you can keep up on what's happening. So a lot more coming. Hopefully this thing goes live in the near future. Thanks for your time, everybody. All the speakers, et cetera, are here. Feel free, approach them, talk to them. We'd love to hear your feedback.